So my main takeaway from all of this is to to not and to not compare your chapter 1 with someone else's chapter 10.
Okay, so we'll go ahead and get started. We'll start off with the event organizers introducing themselves. So that way we could start promptly at 9:15 for the first panel. So we'll start off with the event organizers, and then maybe we could go in order here, starting with Dr. Henry.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Dr. Deborah Henry. I was a practicing neurosurgeon for 26 years, and in 2007, I started working part-time at Coastline. In 2012, became full-time faculty. I teach anatomy and physiology here, so welcome.
Hey, everybody. My name is Dr. Steve Foss. I've worked in biotech before joining Coastline. I guess about 5 years ago, I joined as a full-time faculty member. I teach a handful of classes here at Coastline, and I just want to appreciate all of you for showing up.
Hello, my name is Dr. Demchek. I have a PhD in cancer biology. I've been teaching at Coastline as a part-timer since 2013. I teach Bio 100 and Bio 180, cell and molecular. Welcome.
Hello, everybody. I'm Dr. Daniel Salcedo. I got my PhD in microbiology and molecular genetics. I'm a full-time faculty member here at Coastline. This is now my 5th year. I'm happy to be here, and I'm happy that you guys are here to join us today.
Hi, my name is Ela Farhat. I've been a dietitian for many years, and 2 years, this is my 2nd year at Coastline, and I teach a lot of the health and nutrition classes here.
Hi, I'm Lori Runk. I got my PhD in physical activity, nutrition, and wellness, and then went straight into cardiac rehab, exercise physiology. Came to Coastline in 2015. So my history is more in physical therapy and rehabilitation.
Hi, everyone. I'm Dr. Paolo. I work over at our Career Center. I have a Doctor of Education. So if someone needs a CPR, I won't be able to help them. I'm sorry. But we have a great group of STEM faculty here who have great backgrounds, who are in different areas, which is super helpful. And this event wouldn't have gone without them. And I just want, if Dr. Adrian could, introduce herself, give a few words. I think it's really awesome that we have our college president here, if you haven't met her yet.
Well, thank you. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for inviting me, Dr. Vargas. And as I was listening to our panel, to our event organizers, I couldn't help but be so proud. Sometimes I think there are questions about the credentials of faculty who teach at community colleges. And I think just looking at this panel and hearing about their credentials, there's no question. And I'm so proud of all of them. And I want to welcome the students who are here. Thank you for coming. I know that this has been a difficult year for many of us, and especially students. And many students have had no choice but to drop out of college because of this difficulty. So I'm very pleased that you're continuing to pursue your educational goals. And so I want you to know that we're here for you. I hope that you and your families are doing well, and I hope that you will encourage your friends and family members to go back to school, and Coastline is here for them as well. And we have all kinds of supports for them. And I'm just really pleased to be here with you for a little while. I can't stay, but I was looking at your program and it's so impressive. I want to thank again the organizers, the panelists, the alumni, and just the impressive lineup. So I wish you a really great morning, and thank you, Dr. Vargas, for organizing this. So thank you again.
Okay, so I'll just give everyone a quick overview of the event. It's pretty clear on the event page, but I just want to go through it so we all know where we're going. So the first component, well, first I want to let everyone know that if you fill out the feedback survey at the end, 6 individuals will randomly win $20 gift cards for Amazon. And then so our first session in about 5 minutes is going to be our Coastline alumni panel. And that's really important because sometimes like we're looking back, you're like, oh, I wish I would have known this, when I was in college, when I was at Coastline. So it's really awesome that we do have panels that have taken like either Coastline classes or were alumni who are actually, we have a physical therapist here. We already have doctors who are already there, who's doing the work, and to be able to give back and provide, assistance and give kind of like, their what they would have known would be very, very beneficial for all of you. And then the following session at 10 a.m. will be how to have a competitive application. So we have admission counselor from Kaiser School of Medicine, USC physician assistant, UCI pharmacy, and then CSUN nursing as well. So we try to make it, diverse set of occupations as well as institutions as well. Okay. This is from faculty request because a lot of you already have a bachelor's degree or working on fulfilling your prerequisites for nursing school, PA, PT, med school. So they will kind of give you general tips of how to have a impressive application. Okay. And after that will be the expert panel session. So we're going to have a nurse practitioner, a physical therapist, a PA, a neurosurgeon, a dietitian, and also a pharmacist as well. And the purpose of this event is really to provide students an opportunity to learn, network, and engage with Coastline alumni and professionals in the field of healthcare. So I work over at the Career Center. So I always tell students that, that career exploration is really important because sometimes we're influenced by our parents, for example, or friends or what we see on TV and pursue that pathway without really understanding what it's really like to get there. So this is a great opportunity for you to be exposed to different occupations within healthcare and to interact with them. So and notice how some individuals on this page, there's a link for the LinkedIn as well. So I really emphasize on the power of networking because it really does open a lot of doors. The more people that you know, especially if they're in your field. I've worked with a lot of students who they have a 4.5 GPA. They're super smart, but they don't have the right connections. They don't have the right people. So when they're asking for a reference, they're asking for a letter of recommendation, they panic. Or sometimes they'll ask their last professor they just had because they don't have those networks built. So we want to make sure you start building those networks. I'm not saying like go, add everyone on this list, but be intentional about individuals that you do add. And it's also a great opportunity for you to network beyond this event.
Hi again, my name is Ila Farhat. My experience is as a dietitian and I've joined Coastline as a full-time faculty. This is my second year here and I'm excited to hear from all the alumni and all the advice they have for the rest of the students. Should we start? Okay. So would the panel please just introduce themselves? What about Karis?
Hi, I'm Karis Wong, and I am a Coastline alumni. So I actually attended Coastline to take a number of science classes in my journey in preparation for physical therapy school. So I'm now a practicing physical therapist, and I'm actually a part-time faculty member at Coastline.
Great. What about Sabah?
Hi, everyone. I actually attended Coastline most recently just because I am taking pre-medical courses too for prereqs, and I actually did take undergraduate courses. And right now I am working as an epidemiologist research analyst for LA County Department of Public Health. I pursued a master's in public health, and I'm really excited to be here.
We're excited to have you. Thank you. What about Gerardo?
Hi, I'm Dr. Gerardo Perez. I also attended Coastline for many prereqs. Currently, I'm in residency training to become a psychiatrist. Thank you for having me.
Great. Thank you so much. Great introduction. I just want to know, what did you study at Coastline and then where did you transfer afterwards? So maybe if you can just describe your journey a little bit and to help us guide the students and how you actually got to where you are today. Dr. Gerard Perez, do you like to start?
Sure, no problem. So I guess my journey is a little more atypical, but I think it's becoming more typical now with career changes. But I went to UC Irvine first and got an undergraduate degree there. worked out in the education field for a little while, and then decided I wanted to go to medical school, but realized I didn't have any of the prereqs for that. So what ended up happening was I wanted a school or a program that could give me the flexibility, understood my path, and would allow me to do school and work for a little while at the same time while gathering all the things I needed to apply to medical school. Then subsequently, I finished many courses at Coastline and then went on to that medical school after. Yeah.
Great, thank you so much. Yeah, it seems like the online format just makes it really flexible and easier for people who are already working in other fields. What about Sabah? Would you like to share how your journey started at Coastline, or when it started?
Yeah, I actually studied anthropology and simultaneously took prerequisites in preparation for medical school. I started Coastline when I was 16 years old after taking the California High School Proficiency exam. That gave me the opportunity to graduate right after my sophomore year of high school. So coming in at that age, I really needed to be organized and be equipped to handle undergraduate level courses. I'm also the first person in my family to attend college in the States, and I didn't have a lot of guidance on how college was going to be like. What was great about Coastline was the accessibility and availability of resources that isn't regularly found at other community colleges. And I realized this after taking a course at a different community college, not in California. And it was surprising to see that they didn't have a lot of resources that we had and the quality of education that was received at Coastline. And that includes lab techniques and specific like bio and chemistry courses, the professors, and then just college resources that exist on campus. And one in particular was the tutoring services for chemistry and bio. And that really gave me a chance to network with other students and also develop networking skills at the same time.
Great, thank you. I was actually going to ask also about the resources too. So you did a great job addressing all the different resources we have here. And what about Karis Wong? You mind telling us your journey or how you got where you are today?
Absolutely. So I actually had a journey that was similar to Dr. Perez's journey. I went to UC Irvine for an undergraduate degree. I always loved teaching, so I actually went into that program wanting to teach and got my degree in sociology. But midway through, I just developed more of an interest in the medical field and wanted to find a career path where I could practice medicine and teach. And physical therapy ended up being the right route for me because, I educate patients every day as I'm treating them. And I also realized that I didn't have the prerequisites I needed. So I started attending Coastline and I loved it. And, as I was attending a series of classes, I was thinking to myself that I wish I started here because it's really, really excellent. Like the small class sizes coming from UC Irvine with 400-person lectures and no one-on-one attention. It's such a drastic difference coming to Coastline. And in addition to that, I was really impressed by the faculty. I was one of Dr. Henry's students and I loved all of the clinical examples she gave us. I ate it all up and I was like, oh, maybe I want to be a neurosurgeon now. And so I think that's really unmatched along with what was mentioned earlier about all of the supplies and different labs that are available to us. It's unlike anything I've seen at other programs. And that led me to my doctorate in physical therapy at Chapman.
It's really it's so interesting to hear how everyone had started with something, a different field in mind, and how it changed. Did you take online classes or in-person classes? And how was that in comparison to UCI, like moving from there, other than the class size?
Yeah, I actually took all in-person classes and like I said, most classes at UCI were, 200 to 400 with smaller discussion sizes. And I really felt like I was just a number, right? You have the student ID that's like 17 numbers and letters long. And I really did make an effort to try to attend office hours, but still there was no personal connection. But as we were even just engaging in labs and having a faculty member come around and really give us some individual attention and be able to actually get to know us as people, I found that that just made education infinitely more valuable.
Someone asked in the chat if you got your bachelor's before switching careers or degrees, or did you just change midway?
So I personally changed midway. I don't know about Dr. Perez. I was in the middle of my undergrad education when I kind of decided that I wanted to pursue physical therapy. So I was finishing that as I started to take prereqs and figure out what I needed to apply to graduate school.
That's great. Thank you so much. This is so informative. So how did Coastline prepare you for your education and career? And how did the transition happen to four-year college? Did you feel like you were prepared for it, or how did they prepare you? I guess Dr. Wong, if you want to answer that.
Oh, sorry. Yeah. So for me specifically, you know, I was already I finished taking classes at Coastline when I also finished my bachelor's degree. So in terms of my preparation for graduate school, I found that it was really excellent. So for physical therapy specifically, I know it's probably similar for other healthcare careers. You start with really intensive, you know, anatomy and physiology starting off. And I was a person in PT school who was kind of helping some of my classmates through anatomy and physiology and giving them these little tips that instructors like Dr. Henry and other people at Coastline taught me, and taking on that teaching role a little bit. But the only reason I was able to do that was because I had such a solid foundation. And, you know, I didn't see any of my other classmates bringing out their old notes from other classes in this high level graduate education. And that was the case for me. So I personally felt very well prepared.
This is amazing. What about Sabah? Do you want to answer that question? How did Coastline prepare you for your career and or transferring to another college, a four-year college?
Yeah, so Coastline provided me with a steady foundation. I learned, especially within the science courses, I felt like that really helped me, particularly with the MCAT. I also learned time management, organization, communication skills, team building, to think and write critically. And these were skills that I was introduced to within my courses. I also attended workshops, webinars, and then every time I would attend one, I would just place them all in my little toolbox, and they helped me both personally and professionally. I also still use these skills to this day, and I continue to build on them. When the pandemic first emerged, I was grateful enough to have landed an internship with UNICEF, and that was completely remote. So it was easier for me to adapt to it because I had already had effective communication, even through an online platform. And similarly now in my current role as an epidemiologist, I utilize these skills, and I didn't realize it at the time, but nearly every single thing I had to do as an undergrad and also as a grad student was for a purpose. And some people may not realize why certain things are necessary until you actually need to utilize them.
That's amazing. What about Dr. Perez?
So, I mean, I attended Coastline almost 10 years ago. So quite a while ago. But, you know, there's many examples I can give of how it's kind of prepared my future goals. But I kind of wanted to share a story. While in Dr. Henry's course, it was an anatomy course, you know, we would have these cats that we would use for dissection. And I had never dissected anything, you know. She taught us the basics of how to go about dissecting, how to find the nerves, the tendons, the muscles, the bones in these dissections. When I went on to medical school, I realized that a lot of the skills like necessary for cadaver dissection, I already had. You know, and it was because of courses like Dr. Henry's and the courses that are provided at Coastline that are hands-on. You get the instructor right there with you. showing you either on the model or on the actual dissection, where things go, how they connect. That when I went to medical school, it wasn't a surprise. It wasn't new. Yes, maybe it was a different species, but it wasn't new. And that's invaluable, because when do you get that type of personalized attention from your instructors, and feel comfortable to ask questions and get encouraged so much to ask questions? It's a wonderful experience. And I have many memories of instances like that, where I drew from my experiences at Coastline, especially in the biological courses and the chemistry courses, to put forth models for myself in medical school to really gain from. So, I mean, there's many, but that was one that stuck out when you asked the question.
That's amazing. So it really sounds like Coastline offered you a good foundation professionally, with a lot of great skills, and also individualized attention that you would not necessarily get at those larger schools, which is really amazing, because colleges, especially community college, are really there to create a great foundation for later on. So I know Sabah kind of focused on this, addressed it, but what about Dr. Perez? Is there anything you wish people told you while you were at Coastline that you would like to share? For example, any opportunities like tutoring, for example, that Sabah addressed, or scholarships, or any clubs, or any opportunities that you wish you would have taken advantage of, or you want other students to know of?
Right. I think there's a lot of programs available at Coastline. I don't know if the supplemental instructor program's still there. But and the tutoring, how that's implemented now. But those items were essential. Not only do you get to work to work with the professors closely, but these people that work closely with the professor to kind of distill down some of the information that maybe you're struggling with through tutoring or through supplemental instruction, and get more individualized learning support, which I don't think happens in very many places. That individualized learning support is so essential, especially if maybe you're a non-traditional learner, if maybe just lecture style doesn't work for you, maybe a more personalized approach, going over things together, which was always available to me at Coastline. And I went on to do supplemental instruction for Dr. Henry, and I actually also did tutoring for the chemistry, I think Dr. Ted Marcus, and I always was able to I was trying to distill information for people, make it more manageable. But I think that was the whole goal. That's what we were told to help people with and do, which is beautiful. That they tell you, please help people try to learn this better, right? Which is great. So I really appreciated that was, Coastline's goal, and that's what they wanted us to do, and that's what I obtained from Coastline as well. So it's quite wonderful.
That's amazing. It sounds like, in addition to you being able to help other people, but it also probably helped building a foundation of being helpful, and which is such an important skill for healthcare professionals in general. What about Dr. Wong? Are there any programs you wish you would like to share with the students or want them to take advantage of?
Yeah, so actually my experiences are so similar to Dr. Perez and what he was discussing, because I actually was a student, then became a supplemental instructor or SI leader, and actually became a tutor as well for chemistry as well, which is so odd. But I loved those experiences, and I know that some of them aren't available currently. I'm hoping that as we return to some sort of in-person or flexibility, that those positions will be added back in. So maybe other faculty can speak to that if there are any updates on that. But I, again, just like you said, found that that was incredibly valuable. And even as I was just sitting in the Student Success Center that Coastline has, and I was tutoring students in chemistry in the evenings, I just thought to myself that this was such an incredible resource that is freely available to students, and to have that kind of one-on-one attention with someone who's actually been through those courses is unreal. Like, I don't know of anyone else that offers that. And, you know, in addition to that, there are so many different organizations of students and meetings just like this one that we're having now, and events that Coastline faculty put together. And when I was a student at Coastline, I didn't take the faculty up on these opportunities, and I didn't attend these meetings. And I wish I had, and I wish I soaked up all of the information that was to be had, because like now my perspective as a part-time faculty member, I'm sitting in these meetings and I'm seeing how much extreme dedication the faculty have to students and how many hours they spend discussing, hey, what is the best way for these students? And my biggest advice would just be look out on your email, listen to your instructors, and take every single opportunity that's offered to you.
That's such great advice. Also, I was wondering, how did, like both of you, how did you become tutors, or how did you choose to become tutor? And was it tutoring online or was it in person when you tutored other students? Mommy.
So I'll start. I also, the exact same as Dr. Perez, was in Dr. Henry's class, and she had a really amazing SI leader who's that student tutor who facilitates things and has leads their own discussion courses. And eventually that person ended up going to medical school, and she reached out to me and asked me if I was interested in potentially filling that role for her. And I was super excited to hear that, because that was like a really big goal. You know, I came into undergrad wanting to teach, and I was really thrilled to be able to carry on that role. And in that, I was connected with the Success Center, and they were looking for tutors, and I just applied and kind of fell into that role. And for me personally, it was all in person, and that was years ago.
So for me, it was partially in person. So the chemistry was definitely in person. There was group tutoring. I did the SI, and that was in person. But I also did a bio course with Dr. Henry that I SI'd for, and that was online. So I served as someone that would join in discussions and answer questions from students on a bio course online. So I had a little bit of both. Again, this is 10 years ago. And so it's kind of incredible how ahead of the times Coastline really is, right? Now everybody's struggling to get onto the online scene. Well, Coastline had it down 10 years ago. So, I mean, it goes to show how innovative Coastline has been. But yeah, so I had a hybrid style experience. They were all great. You know, I think that with the online experience, at least with the biology course, I think more people felt comfortable coming forward to ask questions, maybe because there's that interface, right? And so it was, I noted that I got more questions. I was able to like answer more questions and kind of provide more reading or material or distill down information in that fashion. But very innovative and new at the time, but now it's happening everywhere. So, yeah.
That's good. Sabah, do you have anything you wanted to add? Because I know you talked about the resources earlier, but is there anything you want to add or anything you want to emphasize on?
Yeah, having had taken courses through undergrad and then also after graduation or after graduating with my bachelor's, I really felt like, or even also simultaneous in my MPH program, which I took 2 courses with Dr. Foss, I really felt that it was easy for me to be comfortable, even though I went from like being 16 to like 23 and like doing everything within my time at Coastline, and I felt like it was a space for everyone. And even though I felt weird coming back to a community college after transferring, I still felt comfortable because there's so many others around me that were career changers or just are taking time to focus on their prerequisites for medical school or PA school. So I loved my time there. Thank you.
So I have, going back to earlier when I asked you guys about going back to like a four-year college, there's a student that asked did you experience any difficulty in the courses between like the Coastline or community college and, for example, the UCs? Do you feel like you were prepared for the level of difficulty, or was it similar, or how was it?
I personally think that the courses were very similar. I took chemistry courses at UC Irvine, and then I took, physiology at Coastline. And difficulty is something that's hard to say because it depends on the course and it depends on the instructor and the environment you're in. Like I mentioned before, personally, being in lecture halls of 200 to 400 people really created an environment where it felt uncomfortable to talk to your classmates. And I would try to talk to someone, but you sit next to a different person each time, and there really is no sense of community within the classroom. And as a student, I really like communicating with people and I really like working with people. And that made it much more difficult for me to succeed. Whereas at Coastline, you form relationships, you sit next to the same person every time, or even in online classes, there are different chats and groups that we create to facilitate communication among students. And I found that made my experience much easier because you either had someone to study with, you had someone to ask if you had trouble with something. People like like the biology faculty, I know, have little groups in their online classes where they address like fuzzy topics, which is something that I picked up. And that's like a place where it really does facilitate that communication and discussion. And personally for me, I found that made it much easier for me to study and learn these difficult topics.
It's really great. It sounds, because online schools in general are criticized because people assume that you're feeling like lonely and lost and there's no sense of community. But from what you're saying, it really sounded like you actually developed a greater community and more support at Coastline than at other larger schools. So what advice would you have for someone that's already attending Coastline or thinking of attending Coastline that maybe you guys haven't really addressed yet? Dr. Wong, do you have any advice or for students who are attending or planning on attending?
More so, I guess, just in terms of how Coastline will fit in with your pathway. And as you're going here, kind of actively taking a role in discovering what career path is important to you. I personally teach in a physical therapy program now as well. And I talk to the students about the same thing, like look at your opportunities here at Coastline and let it help build your background and build those prerequisites if that's something that you want to pursue, either a bachelor's or a graduate degree. But also take into account, what career are you looking at and why are you looking at it? Do you want that financial stability, and are you going to be able to get that financial stability in a way that you realized? I mean, for me, going into a doctorate program in physical therapy, I did not have a good grasp on finances and how immense my student loans would be. And I just thought, I'll pay it back. I'll do it. It's going to be worth it for the stability. And now I'm looking at this mountain of loans and, I don't know if I would make the decision again. So I know that wasn't directly addressing your actual question, but, take into account these prerequisites, but think about your future and, not only what financial position you want to be in, but what you want your personal life to look like in terms of hours you want working and whether it's part-time, full-time, per diem, etc.
That's actually great advice. Whenever I have students ask me, I always tell them because students don't really think about their loans at this point. They just don't see it. They see the money coming for free and they don't think about it. And that's what I always advise my students too. I'm like, just make sure you don't get too much loans. Like you don't want to be paying half your salary just returning these loans.
Absolutely. And yeah, and it's really tough. And so really take time to look at it. And I know it's really intimidating to figure out the financial world, but there's so many online resources. I mean, even things like Reddit, they have like a big financial group and, you want to do reliable research, but there are communities that will allow you to educate yourself online and make sure you're making an informed decision. Because I wish I did that when I was a student.
That's really great advice. Thank you. What about you, Dr. Perez? Do you have any last words for students that are attending the college or want to attend the college?
Yeah, I think a couple of things. One, I think it's okay to not be perfect. I think, everybody at Coastline has always been supportive. And if you feel like you don't know where you're headed or what your career path looks like or what you really want to do, there are a lot of people that are specialized at Coastline to kind of help you figure that out, which is wonderful. I want to reiterate that that's the whole purpose of that group of people, right? And as a student, I think sometimes we're afraid to reach out and go, well, what are they going to say if we don't know what we really want? But that's exactly what they want to hear. I don't know, so that we can help kind of focus what we want to do next, right? The second piece of advice is it's okay to look at other courses and explore other courses. Let's say you want to go into the medical field and you're like, well, let me do just biology. It's okay to go do some ethics or some public speaking courses and just check it out. What better place than Coastline, right? Because you get the flexibility of the courses. You get professors that care, that are passionate about the topics they're teaching, and you get to just kind of dive into something else. While at Coastline, I did a public speaking course, a communications course. I did some ethics course, an exercise physiology course, all very exciting, not necessarily prerequisites for what I needed, but it was amazing to be able to really explore the other fields out there through maybe introductory courses, and Coastline has them.
This is really great advice. So mainly to go and explore other classes, but also learning skills, because like who doesn't need to learn how to communicate? Like you'll need it in any field or discipline you're in. I also wanted to focus or remind everyone that Coastline actually offers a financial literacy course, and we have the financial aid office which are amazing and providing great resources. So if you're talking about what Dr. Wong was saying about loans and stuff. So that would be a good place to go and check out too. What about Sabah? Do you have any last advice you want to give to the students?
Yeah, so I actually, the reason why I loved Coastline too was it just took a load off my chest about with how to fund school and how to pay for school, because I didn't really understand that at the time. And so when I transferred after UCI, I had no idea about scholarships or anything like that. I was working like 2 jobs, killing myself, and I didn't realize at the time, but I should have sought more advice from other people about how to fund school, because nobody teaches you that. And so I'm happy that there's a course about it. And I think that would be really useful for students to take, because like I said, you don't realize at the time, but you look back and you're like, I wish I took that course, because would have been one really cheap, but also you would have been able to take it. And the other piece of advice would be, don't be in such a rush to get your career started. I think the slowest road to success is if and when you're comparing yourself to others. And it's so easy to do that, especially now. But be patient with where you are, whether you are just starting or taking courses after transferring to a 4-year or returning back to start a different healthcare profession. I mean, your journey's for you and what you put into it. At the same time, there will always be moments when success really depends on your ability of when to take initiative and teach yourself things. mean, you're going to have good professors and bad professors, and ultimately your skills and your scores in the healthcare profession are on you. And so I would take time to learn and understand things when they are presented to you the first time. The more you know, the fewer surprises you will likely encounter. And I would take advantage of the internships, clubs, study abroad programs, and the scholarships that are available to you. Like, I remember being in Dr. Foss's class, and even this past fall, and throughout the semester, he would share internship opportunities and just like workshops. And I think those are really, really helpful. Even if you sit in for like 10 minutes, you'll still learn something. And whichever career you want to be, or what you want to be, exists out there. And I would never settle until you get there. And I wish that for everyone.
Thank you so much. This was such amazing advice. You guys provided amazing information, amazing stories, and I'm so glad that Coastline was part of your career path or educational path. Thank you so much. So we have 5 more minutes to just see if anyone has any other questions before we let you guys go.
I noticed a few questions in the chat that we didn't have a chance to address. One of them being, how did all of us manage our mental health throughout all of these journeys? So I want to take a moment to address that and open it up to you both in a moment. But that was really, really challenging for me. And kind of like we just discussed, I was in a rush to get into the DAC field and work as hard as I could, take as many classes as I could. And looking back, I wish I just took a moment to take a deep breath and just really, really take in the information and not do things as fast as humanly possible, and not only just take in the academic information, but be more aware of how I was developing as a person and what I wanted and my own mental health. And I really encourage anyone who is struggling with anything, access mental health services. I'm actually not familiar with if Coastline has anything available or has any references, so maybe someone else can speak to that, because I'm sure there's at least information available. But I'd say throughout your education, whether it's you're starting at Coastline or you're thinking of attending Coastline for prerequisites or anything like that, honor your mental health. And, you know, whether you finish now or you finish 5 years from now, it's probably not going to make that big of a difference in your overall life. So really seek help if you need it. And I think everyone can have great benefits of seeing a therapist. I've seen a therapist and it helped me immensely, and the same with my closest friends and family. So that's what I have to say. Does anyone else have anything to share about mental health?
Can I add something really quick? So on the chat, I added, we actually do have mental health counselors over at Coastline. It's relatively new, about like 2 to 3 years. I put the link on the chat. Make sure you utilize this. When you're paying this outside of school, these are very expensive services. But the fact that you're a student here at Coastline, these are free for you. So take advantage. I put the direct link. That link will send you to the webpage, and it has a phone number there. Give them a call. Don't be afraid. This is free for you. Take advantage of it. Take advantage. You know, you're paying for the school. Take advantage of these services. Go ahead, Elaf.
Great. I also want to remind students that mental health doesn't necessarily mean like severe depression or suicide, but mental health can be as simple as being stressed out and not knowing how to manage the school or life balance, or it could be really simple stuff that I know when I was in college, I would have thought, okay, I can't really go talk to someone just because I'm stressed out, but you can. So take advantage of all the great services that we have here.
I also wanted to add something about something that I experienced a lot personally, was I had massive test anxiety, and that's like such a huge factor because when you're about to take a test, you just kind of just blank out on everything you've learned. And I think the most important thing that really helped me was I regularly meditate, and I also seek yoga. And this is something that I learned through attending therapy and like finding out different options on what I should do to mitigate those symptoms. And my other piece of advice would be, you know, a lot of the times people enter the health profession to help others, but you really can't help others if you can't help yourself. So really take advantage of that. And I would definitely seek out the mental health resources that are available on campus, because they're so expensive as an adult that I would look in hindsight, I wish I had attended mental health services and gained the skills that I needed to handle those symptoms that I feel periodically, because you're always going to have them throughout your life.
That's really great advice. There's such a stigma linked to mental health in general. So yeah, take advantage of the services that we have.
May I say I agree as well. I'd like to echo what everyone else has said. I am a psychiatrist, so obviously my passion is in mental health. But sometimes, like there was previously mentioned, it might not be something you feel is severe, but merely, if I remember back to my days in college, merely pacing around your kitchen or your living room, wanting to start your work or an assignment, but finding that laundry and the dishes seemed a little more enticing at the time, is just a form of avoidance that's real in mental health. So what we do is we go to our therapists and find some techniques to help ground ourselves and get ourselves moving in the direction of our values. And that's so important. And if Coastline's offering that to the students, I mean, how wonderful, because where else do you get this information from a professional? You would have to get referred from your primary care, and it's just many steps. And if Coastline's just providing that, take advantage.
That's great. That's amazing. Yeah, we have the mental health expert with us here.
I think there was a question about straight A's in there. So about, do you need straight A's?
Did you all have straight A's in all your classes?
I didn't have all straight A's, and I think that the goal shouldn't be to get A's, frankly speaking. I think the goal should be attaining all this information, because they're prerequisites for a reason. That's going to show up on your MCAT. It's going to show up within your courses in graduate school. And I think that if you contain that material and actually not forget it, you'll be able to get straight A's.
I agree. I mean, I didn't have all straight A's, and I think that if you're looking to just look at that as a measure of what you've learned, then you're going to constantly be reaching for something that may not be possible, right? One of the things, though, is which Sabah said, was really looking at what you're learning and diving deep into the material you're learning. Because the more you garner understanding of what you're studying, the longer term it'll be with you. And those are the foundations or the skills that you need in the future for either a career or a professional school. So I do believe that understanding and learning the material and understanding the mechanics of the material, whatever that may be, is much more important than getting straight A's. You might say, well, straight A's are necessary because the graduate schools think that this is the only way to measure. But there's also like the GRE or the MCAT and all these professional schooling tests that measure other things. So you have a good foundation, you're probably going to do better on these exams as well. And then when you're in school, you won't struggle because your foundation is solid. So give yourself that future gift. Do that now so that future you think's past you.
Thank you so much, everyone, for being with us and providing all this information. And for the students who want to connect with you, the LinkedIn profile is actually on the website. So feel free to reach out to them directly and ask them any questions. And thank you so much for being with us.
So I am Dr. Demchek. I've been teaching at Coastline for 8 years now, and I'm currently serving as co-chair for the biology department. And I'm hosting the panel on your application to get into whichever graduate school you are looking to get into. So what I want to do first is have each one of the panelists introduce themselves.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Agasia Lanier, and I am with Kaiser Permanente Bernard J. Tyson School of Medicine. We are a new medical school. We opened actually last year. Our first cohort is currently in their second semester, and we are wrapping up interviews for our second cohort right now. Very proud to be here and very honored to be here. So thank you for having me.
Hi, everyone. My name is Sarah Diosdado Ortiz. I'm the Director of Admissions for the Primary Care Physician Assistant Program at USC. And I've been there for going on almost 10 years.
Hi, everyone. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Oh, great. Hi, I'm Hetty. I'm from UCI School of Pharmacy and Pharmaceutical Sciences in their PharmD program. We are a new school, and we're currently admitting our inaugural class to start this fall. Prior to this role, though, I was a pre-health advisor also for UC Irvine at the School of Biological Sciences for about 15 years. It's very nice to meet everyone.
Hello, everyone. My name is Sterling Davis, and I am the academic advisor at California State University Northridge for the nursing department. I have been the advisor for the past year, but prior to that, I was the department coordinator. So I've been with the department for almost 4 years. We offer 3 different programs in our department, but the one that would probably be the most interest to most of you is our accelerated BSN program. That's a program where it's a 15-month intensive program for those who already have a bachelor's degree in another. So we accept cohorts every fall and spring semester, and I'm definitely glad to be here.
So the first question I have for all of you, and maybe we'll start with Sterling and work our way back. What kind of job experience do you recommend that applicants have when they're applying to get into your program?
So for our program, we're looking for applicants who have either work experience or volunteer experience in any type of direct patient care setting, or any type of clinical setting. If you have like EMT certification, CNA certification, or any other type of medical certifications, that will really help your application to stand out. If you had experience working and volunteering in a hospital, dealing with patients, or even like helping patients with physical therapy or a nursing home, all those things will help your application stand out.
For students interested in pharmacy, it varies between the pharmacy schools. There's some pharmacy schools will require clinical experience, where there's others that do not. A good majority of applicants that do apply to pharmacy programs do have probably a pharmacy technician's license, and that probably takes could take up to 2 years to get, but it can be fairly quick as 1 year, and there's some accelerated programs that are less. But the reason why a lot of applicants choose to get a pharmacy technician's licensure is that what it does is it allows the applicant a bigger scope of what they can do in a clinical setting, allowing them to be behind the counter with the pharmacist. Now, if students that do not have a pharmacy technician's license, that's perfectly fine. It's just that you're limited in what you can do in a pharmacy setting. But if you're not able to, then of course, volunteer experience in a clinical environment is also very valuable to us. And just being able to observe a pharmacist is wonderful, but also how a pharmacist work with other healthcare professionals. And also, but another tip is why students like to become a pharmacist technicians is because you can get paid. You can be paid to volunteer, and the average salary for a pharm tech is about $30,000 a year. And so why not, right?
And that's a way to work your way through school or help, or give you some financial assistance. Thank you. Sarah.
Yes, so for a physician assistant, we look for hands-on patient care experience. We will accept both paid and non-paid, so any amount of hours, whether it be as a medical assistant, a scribe, we accept EMT experience, caregiver experience. But as long as you get that hands-on patient care experience, that is kind of what we're looking for. And then with the volunteer opportunities, again, kind of similar to Sterling, we will accept anything that's hands-on patient care, that's volunteer work. But it would mostly have to be in line with like taking vitals, weighing patients, changing bedding, things that are more hands-on patient. If you're reading books or being more of a companion, then that would actually fall into a different category of just regular community experience.
Pretty similar to every other representative that's spoken, but I'll add a couple of other things. We're also looking for research experience, especially going into medical school. For our school, we actually have a scholarly project that is required of all our graduates. So research is definitely going to be something that is going to be at the top of the list for our applicants. Volunteering, and that could be if you see patient care in action, that is pretty much what we're kind of looking for as far as volunteering. Shadowing, we hear a lot of shadowing. That's kind of getting your clinical experience. How do you know you want to be a physician if you haven't been in the clinical area? That's what we're looking for. Scribing is really big among our students or the applicants that are applying. And I actually just saw a question in the chat, I know, related to COVID. What we've been seeing a lot of students or applicants actually did some contact tracing. We've seen students flip over to virtual volunteering. So I know there's some people that are calling and doing some work kind of virtually, depending on what it is. Research, depending on what the research is, has slowed down a little bit, but some students are still able to research during COVID. But I think there are still things out there. I know that it did kind of slow us down, but there are still opportunities while we are still going through the pandemic.
I think for those that are looking for volunteer experience, you may have to look a little harder, but you'll find it. So my next question for you all, letters of recommendation. How important are they for your program?
Very important. So for our program, and we are required at least a minimum of 3 letters of recommendations. You can go up to 6. Depending on your school, you may have an opportunity to receive a committee letter, which is basically coming from maybe a pre-med program, and then they have a committee letter that is written on your behalf. We will accept that as well. But what we really like to see, don't go for just getting a letter from a doctor. You want to get someone that really knows and can speak to your characteristics, your experience. If you have volunteered, if you have research experience, scribing experience, get those letters from those people. And then, we're also wanting to know your academic side. So definitely want to get at least one academic letter of reference in your file.
Great. So have a good balance. Sarah, do you have anything you want to add to that?
Yeah, so for us, it's we want to encourage everyone to kind of get a letter from a physician assistant, a science professor, and a physician or a mentor. But we also want to make sure that the letters that they are receiving can really speak on the person's behalf. I've seen several times going through these applications that they shadow maybe a PA for 20 hours or try to get a little bit of shadowing experience in, which is great. But then they also ask that PA for a letter of recommendation. And I've seen multiple times where it's just a few sentences saying they shadowed me, they seemed great, but I haven't really gotten to know them. And so I would just really strongly suggest that you really develop that relationship with whoever you are going to be asking that letter for, because they are really important in that decision piece of the application. And it's great to kind of check those boxes of what we're kind of looking for, but it's also great to have someone to be able to speak about your characteristics and why you should actually be in that profession.
I agree with you. I get asked to write letters of recommendation a lot because I teach cell and molecular biology, and it is very difficult to write a letter for somebody that, even though they're in my class, I haven't interacted with enough. Yeah, so forming those more social interactions in a way helps for those of us who are writing those letters. Okay, Hetty, would you like to talk about the letters of recommendation?
Yes. Prior to when I was in the School of Biological Science as a pre-health advisor, I was also the coordinator of our in-house letters of recommendation service, sending wonderful letters to all these great colleagues I have on this panel with me. And I have seen great letters, and I have seen letters that are two-liners. And so my point to students is that think of this as the letters help the admissions committee paint a picture of the type of person you are through their lens. And so it's very important to find someone who really knows you. And with that, though, it's a two-way street. It requires a lot of effort on the student's part, effort on the faculty's part, whoever you're asking. And so I tell students, and some students say, well, Hetty, I'm shy. And I say, well, you have to, part of growth is getting out of your comfort zone and getting to know someone. And so I say sometimes the best time to start is the first day of class, and not just being a student in the crowd, but at the end of the class, go up to your faculty and say, hi, Professor so-and-so, my name is, and shake their hand. Well, you can't shake hands, right? A fist bump, whatever you want to do. But then afterwards, though, does it end there, though? After class, it doesn't mean like, oh, I introduced myself and that's it. They only know your name and they might forget it by the end of the day. So you have to repeatedly make efforts to connect with them, to go to office hours frequently, not just right before a midterm or a final exam, and offer services and make sure that whatever you're offering, you can commit to. So for example, you'll say, Professor so-and-so, I know you're working on this project. Is there anything I can help you with this? I'm really interested in it. And it's because of this, and this, make those efforts and hopefully, and if you can, take another class with that professor, build that timeline of it's not just just one term and done. A lot of things in life when we think about think of a letter, getting a letter right, or write your letter as building a relationship, and that relationship will continue with you. I have junior high teachers that I still keep in touch with, and it's because those relationships are important to me. And that will shine in your letter of recommendation.
Great. Thank you, Hetty. That's really good advice. Sterling, would you like to add to it?
Yes. So for our accelerated BSN program, we no longer accept letters of recommendation for the application. We used to, but the admissions committee decided that it really stalls the processing of the applications, and it really doesn't help us to really understand quality of the applicant. So that's not a requirement anymore for our program. Would like to add that in terms of how much volunteer experience we're looking for, there's a volunteer experience form for our application, and we are looking for at least 100 hours in the past 2 years from when you apply. And any type of work experience can go on your resume. Generally, the admissions committee is definitely going to look closely at your work experience from the past 5 years. I know some people talked about having issues finding volunteer experience during this pandemic. I've been telling a lot of people who are in the LA area about the Cope Health Scholars Program. That's a great program that pairs volunteers with local hospitals to get that hands-on experience, and that really helps your application to stand out. And they've been taking applicants all through the pandemic. They haven't stopped. So that's definitely a great program to look into if you're in the LA area.
Yes, we do have, they talk to Coastline too. And so you can, I believe they do it at some local hospitals in Orange County, the COPE. So if you have, thank you, somebody posted it. So keeping with the topic of letters of recommendation, Norman was asking, is it better to have 3 good academic letters of recommendation versus 3 basic letters? So any of my panelists that want to answer that, go for it.
Short answer, yes. It's always better to have that than 3 basic letters. Yeah. I have the privilege of sitting in on a lot of our committee member meetings when they are making those final decisions. And 9 times out of 10, when they're really coming down to those, what they call splitters, who's gonna get in, they will go back to those letters of reference, and they can immediately tell, no, this is, just someone who was in class and they, knew the professor, and maybe they went to a few office hours, versus someone who had a genuine, ongoing mentor-mentee relationship. You can really see that in those letters. So definitely want to have those letters that impact, because they can go a long way, and they can mean the difference between you getting in or not.
How can the applicant make their application stand out from everybody else's?
Okay, so for our program, the main things the admissions committee is looking for is they're looking at your overall GPA from your first bachelor's degree. You have to have a minimum GPA of 3.0. They're looking at your grades for our prerequisites. We have 5 prerequisites you have to complete, and you have to have a minimum of a C grade. So of course, if you want your application to stand out, you want to get high grades, particularly on the science prerequisites. For the students we admit, their average GPA from their first bachelor's degree is a 3.5. And just like I said before, having work experience or volunteer experience in the medical field really helps your application to stand out, because the admissions committee, they really want to see that you have gotten your feet wet in the medical field, that you know what you're getting into, and that you know you've had experience dealing with patients. And, so when you get into the clinical labs for the nursing program, pretty much, you pretty much are able to pick things up when you're in the clinical setting. So pretty much, definitely those are the main things, like having a good GPA from your first degree, high prerequisite grades, particularly with the sciences, and having any type of experience before you apply to the program.
I think when it comes to an application, for it to stand out, in addition to the academics and the extracurricular, what really comes down to is the story that you're trying to portray in your application. And when I say that is tell the admissions committee about you, and not just why you're interested in this profession, but just about you, so that they can get to know you better. And it doesn't have to be a personal statement that's like a episode out of Grey's Anatomy or ER or a Stephen King novel. It's basically just share your story of where this motivation, where this drive, so that they can get to know you. But also, I want to remind applicants is that it's not just we are who we are because we're influenced by the people around us. Sometimes you're inspired by an aunt or an uncle or an incident in your family that makes you want to pursue this profession. But make sure that you make this personal statement or about you. That it's not all about these individuals. They because of them, therefore I am. It's because I am because of this. And move on with it. But it's really just telling your story and really showing that passion, that drive, that I really want this. And this is why.
I completely agree with Hetty. I think the biggest thing that we always tell applicants is know your why. Why do you want to be in the PA profession? Why do you want to have the opportunity to reach out and help individuals? Why our mission? Because our mission for the PA program is primary care and working in underserved communities. And so we really value those that want to go back and go into those communities. And so the biggest thing that would stand out in an application would be community service. And that wouldn't even be volunteer in a healthcare setting. It would be community service at your local mission or at a food bank, or if you're doing any type of tutoring in underserved communities, anything that is more community based, we really value. And that just kind of goes hand in hand with the mission of our program, because we do have a lot of community service opportunities and experiences throughout the program that we really value. And then painting the picture of a personal statement, we read them, quite often. And I love the theatrical, like, opportunities and saying, my heart was pounding, the clock struck 5, I rushed over. I mean, that's great. But we really want to know you. Why? Like, just tell us everything about you. And we love that you like to set up different storylines and stuff. But I feel like sometimes you miss the opportunity to really speak about yourself and about just why you want to get into the profession that you want to actually go into. And be true to yourself. I think sometimes people don't give themselves enough credit. And so really just reflect on what you actually have accomplished, overcome, the challenges that you've faced. And those are really moments that we like to see as well. Like, what grit did you have in order to get to where you are now? That really is something that really speaks about a personal statement. And then another thing would be, we are a holistic review process. So it's not just really based off of grades. We really look at the letters of recommendation, what you've done. If you are a career changer, we like to see, like, why did you want to change from one career to another? So there's so many different opportunities that we really value. And so we look at every single portion of an application.
Thank you. That was a lot of really good information. One of the things I noticed, you're talking about your school looking for those that have volunteered. And that might be really good advice when you are applying to the different schools, to look into what, you said your mission is looking, focusing on that kind of thing. So as an applicant, you probably want to look into each of the schools and kind of tailor your application based on what, they're looking for, right? Instead of having a general application that you submit to like 5 different schools. Okay, Agasha, would you like to continue talking about how to make your application stand out?
Actually, you just kind of segue into what I was going to say.
Excellent.
And I'm speaking just across the board for medical schools, but also for our school as well. I cannot tell you how many times committee members, even, our file reviewers that are reviewing your files, we are looking for people who are mission fit. That is like a big thing for them. So when you're looking at schools that you want to apply to, please check the mission and vision of that school. If you do not connect to that mission and vision, they're going to pick up on that, and it's going to be shown in your application. I was kind of giggling a little bit as regards to the personal statement. Sounds like we've all been reading some of the same personal statements, but I do love those personal statements too. But you definitely want to make sure that we see who you are and why you want to become a physician. For people who are applying to medical school, the personal statement goes to every single medical school that you're applying to. That's just your foot in the door for us. Mm-hmm. What really breaks down and what really gets to the nitty gritty, for lack of better words, is the secondary application. And that is when each school sends you a secondary application, we're asking you to write a little bit more based on what we're looking for in an applicant. So for example, if anybody who's applying for 2020, I'm about to give you a secret here. We do have an optional essay, and it's related to COVID. And the question is basically just say, please share how COVID has affected you. And even though it's optional, I'm going to tell you right now, write the essay. Everyone has been affected by COVID. And for those that are like, my research stopped, my volunteer, service stopped, something like that, we need to see that. And that's not where you don't want to put that in your personal statement. You put that in your secondary application where we're asking that. So definitely wanted to give advice on that. Last thing I wanted to say is something that one of our file reviewers, we literally just had a meeting, and I asked them, I was like, I'm actually going to be doing a panel in a couple of days, and I know I'm going to get this question, what makes me stand out? So can you give advice? And my favorite thing that one of our file reviewers said is, tell them to demonstrate passion, not just ambition. And that hit me. And I was like, I'm going to share that. Demonstrate passion. In other words, if you are someone who says, I'm very passionate about juvenile diabetes, we need to see that throughout your application. that needs to be shown throughout your application. If you say, I'm passionate about juvenile diabetes, and then we see that you've only volunteered 10 hours, for juvenile diabetes, that doesn't really show us passion. So that's what they're going to be talking about, and what they're going to be looking for in your applications. Show that passion, show who you are. And I think I'll stop there. I could go on for days.
Sure. Thank you all. So it really does sound like you want to be seen as an individual, and you have to show your strengths and your passions to stand out. For those that are not able to work face-to-face right now, there's a lot of people that are doing toxicology, hematology, COVID-19 tests. Is that something they can use in their applications, especially, with the situation as it is?
I can address it. So for us, COVID-19 tests would be accepted. For toxicology and hematology, I'm not quite sure. We would need to have a little bit more of a description on it. I think for our program, and I'm sure for a lot of other programs, I mean, since the pandemic has hit, I think we've been pretty forgiving for people not being able to have these especially volunteer work, because it's pretty much put a stop to a lot of the volunteer opportunities and stuff. So I think the committee is very aware. I think a lot of programs are very aware. And so whatever can really help, whether it's even volunteering at the COVID-19 sites, or, or even just doing the testing and stuff, anything that you could kind of volunteer, I think would be helpful to your application in general.
Also, I agree as well. I mean, we will take COVID-19 test as experience. I also want to just also state for our program, we also have a statement of purpose for our application that our admissions committee really looks at. And so, if you don't have the ability to, find work experience, volunteer experience, because you're overwhelmed with so many other things in life, definitely express that in your statement of purpose, because just like everyone else's program, our admissions committee is looking at the full applicant. It's not just about the grades. So, obviously, if you have work experience or volunteer experience, it can really help your application stand out, but it's not exactly the necessary thing you need to get into the program. It is possible to get into our program without that experience.
Since many of our laboratory courses are online essentially, or via Zoom, and our students are not in the lab doing hands-on experiments, how can this impact them when they apply to graduate schools, since they still are taking the courses, but they're not necessarily getting the hands-on?
I'll speak to that.
Okay.
For all the California medical schools, actually all the admission deans got together last year when the pandemic first happened, and put together a statement stating that we will be flexible in regards to courses. We understand exactly what's going on with all the students that are, taking sciences right now. So it is not going to hinder their application. We're flexible in that regards. We will take online. We will take credit, no credit. We will take courses that, we understand the lab is not necessarily in person. So we are very flexible with that. It's really more of a case-by-case situation, but I haven't seen any issues, not with this particular cohort that we're interviewing for. And it's going to be the same thing for the next admission cycle for 2022. I mean, even more so for that matter. So I would say, as far as medical school, especially if you're applying for a school in California, I would not worry about that.
So our program has actually always accepted online lab courses. So it hasn't really impacted us. The only change that we have made is pass, no pass. And that has been since the pandemic, we've accepted pass, no pass grades, which beforehand we would actually require a letter grade of C or higher.
And then if for applicants concerned about that, you can always visit the Health Professions Associations link. For example, like the AAMC, the AACP, there is a section that would say COVID, and you can click on that and to see the links to maybe the other schools to see what they're grading their policies on courses taken online and pass no pass.
Julian wrote, is there anything committees put major emphasis on? Oop, that just moved on me. For example, even though school websites say they look at applicants as a whole, I've heard individuals with fantastic experience and letters of recommendation will still not be looked at if their GPA barely hits the minimum requirement.
Our application is truly a holistic review process. We don't have any minimums that need to be met in order for an application to be fully reviewed. So it actually goes through a 3-person review process. And if you're at a 3.0, even if you're below the GPA requirement, it'll still go through that entire process because we want to make sure that we're capturing the individual as a whole.
Yes. So if your GPA falls below the 3.0 requirement, you're still encouraged to apply. It's just even more important that you get high grades on your science prerequisites because that's a good determiner for us on how you'll do in the program. Also, in the statement of purpose, explain what your situation was, if you had any hardships, during your first degree, just explain that to us, pretty much we're very understanding, that, people have, life happens, people have adversity that they have to deal with. And so, sometimes they just need another chance and, definitely showing your prerequisite grades and just explaining your passion for this profession in the statement of purpose will really kind of show us that you're on pretty much that you have the mindset of what you really want to do now. So, yeah.
So we do have a holistic admissions review in our PharmD program, but I want to stress to applicants that, though we understand maybe it was your first year, you're adjusting from, high school to college. At some point in time, though, the admissions committees needs to see some sort of academic consistency that shows that you are able to handle the rigors of a strong science program. And so we do look at applications even though the minimum GPA is not met, but it's very important that you're able to show some consistencies in your academics, because at the end of the day, you're going to be immersed in a very rigorous curriculum. And we want to make sure that you are in a good position, that you will be successful in that curriculum.
I couldn't have said it better myself, but just speaking to our school, we do not have a GPA minimum or MCAT minimum score. We also have a holistic approach to reviewing. Not to say that your GPA and your MCAT score isn't important, it is to us, but we're looking at other factors in your application, which is why we were talking about those letters of recommendation and your experiences, your leadership experience, volunteer experience, all that comes into play. And even if you are selected for an interview, that will go into, your decision for admissions as well. I want to say, and this is just across the board, for medical school, you want to at least, people always ask me, well, what's the minimum? If you have to have a minimum above a 3.0, and above a 500 on the MCAT is pretty much what is your benchmark if you have to have a benchmark. But, that doesn't mean that they're going to just say no, if you're below. It really does depend on what your life experiences are. So you do have to explain that. Also going with academics and kind of playing off of what Hetty mentioned, we look for upward trends. So if you did have some academic difficulty there, it's okay, but don't make excuses for it. Just, say what happened, but then hopefully you're displaying an upward trend in your academics that will also catch the attention of a committee member to see that you learn from your experiences and you know what to do to get the good grades and to succeed.
I actually want to address the last question really quickly about when should you reach out about the letters of recommendation. My feeling as somebody who's written quite a few of them, reach out as soon as you know you are applying. Even if it's for next January, it goes back to setting up that interaction with that professor. Okay, meet with them via Zoom, talk with them. And that way they're prepared when you come back to them in 6 months or whatever and ask them to write it. You don't want them necessarily to write it now, okay? But to set up that relationship now is really important for later, okay? So we're going to take that 5-minute get out of your seat and stretch break before our next panel discussion. Thank you.
So Lisa, I thought maybe Dr. Faust and I can, and Dr. Salcedo, if he still can answer that question too about letters of recommendation, okay, since we all get that while everybody's taking a break and people are still here. Because I think there was about, should you wait, right? I prefer being asked closer to the time, right? Because I won't write the letter until it's closer to the time because people change their minds with their career choices and everything. But it's still best to ask a professor. For me, it's easier to write a letter if you've taken more than one class from me, if you've taken 2, right? Because then I've really got to know you. And if I can write the letter close to the time that you've taken the class from me. So sometimes I'll get asked to write a letter 5 years later. Well, 5 years later, when I've had hundreds and hundreds of students, and I can't write as good of a letter as if one that I can write that recently taken 2 classes from me. And I can write it with 1 class, but it's a better letter, as people have been mentioning. It's a better letter when I know you better.
So on kind of the flip side of that, I have had situations where students in my courses, and they're currently students in my courses, maybe they've only been in the course for a month, are asking for a letter of recommendation at that time for a program. And that student, I barely got to know that student. They've only been in the class again, maybe for a month or 2 months. And so I would definitely recommend against that. I typically will tell that student, I don't think I can give an accurate assessment of your ability as a student. If I've, you've only, maybe we haven't even had an exam yet, or, I've barely had a chance to talk to you. So I'd say you balance it. You want to have from an instructor that you've taken recently, as Dr. Henry said, but I'd say if you've never taken a course with an instructor before and you're in the middle of the first course with that instructor, as long as the letter can be written after the course is done, I think that's appropriate. But asking for a letter from the instructor currently in the course, again, I don't think that's probably in your best interest.
Yeah, and speaking for me, I tell students to kind of tell me about their extracurricular activities, because all I can really assess is what I see you in my class and your exam scores. So I tell them to open up with me and tell me about their life experiences, their community service, what they're doing, and that helps to kind of personalize their recommendation letters and just simply saying they went to my class, they got good grades, that was it, right? You don't want that 2-line letter recommendation. You want a nice, well-written letter recommendation where the instructor knows who you are, they know more about you. So I tell students to, if they're willing to share with me your personal statement, share with me your resume, your CV, something that I can also, build onto your writing a really good letter of recommendation. And then remind us, right? I don't mind if you tell me early and it's due like 3 months ahead, but please bug me, nudge me, say, hi, Dr. Dan, just want to know if you've submitted already. There's 2 weeks remaining. I don't mind at all being, bugged and nudged. I need it because I have so many that I just forget who I owe it to. So please, nudge us, email us and remind us, say hi, just reminding you. Yeah.
Yeah, I second that. Remind me. And I also always ask for their CV and their, to share with me other details. It really does help me write a better letter.
All right. Good morning, everybody. I hope you're doing okay. With the Zoom, I swear there's a real thing called Zoom blindness. I looking at the camera all day long. So I'd like everybody to introduce themselves. And
Hi, good morning. Dr. Patel, a physical therapist. Hope you're all doing well. Just wanted to introduce myself. I am a physical therapist for over 21 years. Had an outpatient clinic for 20 years, just recently sold it, and now become more of a full-time professor. So I teach at Fullerton, Coastline, SAC, Stanbridge. So I really enjoy it. I still see patients per diem. So I still keep my foot in the door, but my passion is teaching. But if you have any questions about therapy and getting into the programs, I definitely have a few connections that can help you out with. So ask me any questions you want.
Hi, good morning, everyone.
My name's Kelly Malone. Can you all hear me? Okay. I am a physician assistant. I've been a physician assistant now for about 13 years. I'm actually an engineer by trade, and I did that for about 7 years before making my switch. I currently work at UCSD at the Moores Cancer Center, Infusion Center, and I'm excited to participate today. Thanks.
Hi, I'm Esther Kim. I'm a neurosurgeon at Loma Linda University Medical Center. I've been in attending for 6 years, and it's great to be here.
Hi, my name is Ela Farhat. I've been a dietitian for 13 years now. Graduated from Loma Linda University, and I experienced different areas in nutrition. And as a dietitian, my main passion was critical care. So as an ICU dietitian before moving to Coastline to become a full-time faculty.
You could talk about life and practice at the same time, right?
Balancing, work-life balance.
Well, all of us know about that. Dr. Robert.
Thank you. Very excited to be here. Thank you for inviting me. I am a pharmacist and I am retired at this point. I worked as a retail pharmacist for over 30 years. It's something that I thoroughly enjoyed. However, it was time for a change. I thought that was enough time. So I'm currently working as a realtor.
I did. I'm Jamie Guthrie. I'm from Oklahoma, but do a lot of work in California. I teach nurse practitioner school at the university in San Diego, and I do addiction medicine and also some urgent care. So I like to dabble in quite a few little areas. I am really excited to be here.
All right, thank you all. And I'm going to ask Paolo to stop screen sharing so I can see faces better. And I have 4 questions. So we're going to do the 4 questions, and then we're going to open it up to questions for everybody. So everybody has questions to answer everything. And I'm just going to go in the order that I see faces on my screen. And the first question is, briefly explain a typical day.
Sure. Typical day, I'll go into the clinic and we get our schedule, and we'll look at how many patients have evaluations. So we actually balance seeing regular patients with evaluations. So I typically evaluate maybe 2 or 3 new patients. It could be a total knee, it could be shoulder pain, low back pain, and then all the other patients that come in with their regular. So I actually worked 7 to 7 for 20 years, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and I was able to, so I did 3 12s, and then on Tuesday and Thursday, it gave me flexibility to teach. And that's how I got into teaching, was I was able to see patients Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and then on Tuesday, Thursday, it gave me the flexibility to teach and do administrative business work, which is not fun.
Jamie, can you tell me about your typical day?
It definitely depends on which position I'm working. I would say the position I do really full-time is addiction medicine. I do telemedicine from Oklahoma, Monday through Friday. And really we cover about, I think we have 20 clinics that we do the medical care for in California, along California. And my typical day looks like being on call for any new admissions that come in our addiction medicine clinics.
Thank you. Dr. Farhat, a typical day as a dietitian.
So as a dietitian, we typically work 8-hour days. Usually, a lot of times, schedule is flexible depending if you work inpatient or outpatient. So I was working inpatient, and I typically went in really early just because it worked better with my schedule. So I got in maybe like at 7, reviewed all the patients' chart before we had the medical rounds with the ICU team. And then we discuss the patients, and then I go back to my office and I chart on all the patients and complete the recommendations for them. Of course, it's different if you're outpatient, where you have one-on-one clients, for example, or group classes. Then there's more specific time, kind of less flexibility in it. But that's typically how the schedule looks like.
Yeah, I think we have to, for those of you that want, being a parent and practicing, it is amazing. Let me tell you, I used to bring my kid in to rounds with me as a neurosurgeon, and I mean, he saw me put up. I sat him at the end of an ICU bed, and he watched me do surgery when he was 3 years old. And so, I mean, we do what we have to do. It's just amazing. Dr. Roberts, you want to tell us about being a pharmacist? Typical day.
Okay, thank you. Yes, I worked in the retail sector actually all of my career for a number of different chain pharmacies. I worked a variety of schedules. Most of the time it was 10 or 12-hour days. Most of the time we really weren't afforded any breaks because we were considered salaried employees. I think a lot of that has changed more recently, where more breaks are allowed. Because of this rigor of the type of schedule, I would always prepare myself in the morning for those patients that would be coming in that would especially need my help. So I would prepare myself by thinking about being open to questions. When you work in retail, anybody would walk in, you really couldn't plan your day. You didn't have a set schedule. So there would be hours of the day that would be extremely busy. So you really needed to just be available for those questions that would come in. And I found that that was the most helpful in focusing on taking care of the clients that I needed to take care of.
Thank you. Dr. Kim?
As a neurosurgeon, we're typically, I would say, in a hospital setting, we're salaried position typically. And so we don't have a typical day, maybe more of a typical week or month, depending upon how many calls you're taking. But typically on a week, you would have maybe 1 to 2 clinic days where you have your typical like 8 a.m. start to whenever clinic ends. For some people, it could be 4 p.m., 6 p.m., maybe even 7 p.m. if clinic is running very long. And then you would typically have 1 to 2 OR days where you would generally start at maybe around 6:45 in the morning, and then you just operate until whenever your cases are done. If you have a short day, it could be as short as 12 p.m. or if it's a long day, it could be as long as midnight. It just kind of depends on what cases are going. And if you're on call, which you typically do for 24 hours at a time, generally, you might have to go in for emergency surgeries throughout the day or in the middle of the night. So it's variable. But then there are also, I have about 1.5 administrative days a week as well. So those are the times where there'll be more kind of office hours, like 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. So that's kind of how it works.
Thank you. So I'm going to put question number 2 and number 3 together. And number 2 is, what is the best part of your career? What do you love about it? And number 3 is, what don't you love about it? So Dr. Patel, you want to tell us why you ended up in PT and why you love it, and then probably why you left it, right?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I have a passion. I played sports in high school, and I got a lot of injuries, and I actually went to PT myself. So that's how I became passionate in the field. What I love about it is the flexibility. You do work long hours, but you have flexibility. Never work weekends. But I see a new patient every time, and I really enjoyed working with the knee, the shoulder, the back. I mean, that's my passion because I've hurt every single joint when I was playing. So I think that's why I relate to it more. The reason that I left, and I'm sure everyone will, is the insurance and the dealing with the administrative stuff. And it just got too much the field itself. If I had to see only patients and not do paperwork, I'd do it all day. But the paperwork to justify why I need to do that is what kind of led me to, not that I don't enjoy it, but it's just that's the least favorite part of the work that I do.
Thank you. And now you switch the type of paperwork you do, right?
Yeah.
So, Jamie.
So I know I mentioned being on call on a previous question. For me, on call looks like 6 hours at a time. So my on call days tend to be short. Some days they're very busy where I'm running the entire 6 hours. Sometimes it's intermittent. And I love the flexibility that I have as a family nurse practitioner to really work in any area. Working from substance abuse to urgent care to teaching. Education is really probably where my biggest passion lies, to be honest. But I find that I get to incorporate a lot of that education in the other positions that I work as well. My least favorite part, and I laugh because just like Dr. Patel, I tell patients all the time, if I never had to chart, my job would be perfect. I don't have to deal with any of the insurance companies. Thank goodness they do that for me. I have an awesome administrative team. But I hate having to mess with the charting, which seems like it takes up a majority of the time, honestly. And just a lot of the little dotting my T's and crossing my I's, a lot of the little tiny details that I could personally do without.
Kelly, I am so sorry. You're stuck in a different place on my screen. This is my bad thing about Zoom. You want to tell us about a typical day as a PA?
Sorry about that. So typical day for me, in the role where I am now at UCSD, the infusion center where I work, we are open every day of the year except Christmas and Thanksgiving. And we're open 7:30 in the morning until 9:30 at night. So my schedule is I work 3 12-hour days. And I would probably describe my job as kind of oncology urgent care, because we have so many patients coming through, a few hundred patients a day. And a lot of them are oncology patients that are being seen by physicians in our cancer center, but a lot of them are coming from the community, maybe from a general medicine doctor. They're coming for infusions for any number of things. So myself and we have a few other advanced practice providers, we're there to handle all the emergencies and urgent things that come up during the day, whether it's an infusion reaction, a blood product reaction. It could be this patient has chest pain, or this one has shortness of breath, or can you assist with all these lab abnormalities that just popped up? So we're really working in an autonomous fashion with the nurses to try to solve all the problems of the day, so that we don't have to bother the physicians that are in clinic or in the OR. So I never know what the day is going to look like. It was hard to get used to when I first started working there, because it really varies. It's unstructured. So it's not like I have a clinic schedule per se, or I'm rounding in the hospital and know what patients I'm going to round on. I'm kind of a lifeguard. And some days are super busy and some days aren't. And you're kind of on the edge of your seat, just kind of waiting to see what's going to happen. So it's a little different than some of the more traditional positions I've held, where I've either worked in a clinic, strictly in a clinic all day, or strictly in the hospital rounding on patients. So I'm kind of a jack of all trades in this role.
Thank you, Kelly. I'll come back to you and ask you what was the best part and the worst part of your day.
Okay.
All right, Dr. Parahat.
Okay, so when I wanted to become a dietitian, I had talked to some dietitians and they said, look, we need air and water and food to sustain our lives and live. We have limited control on the water or the quality of water and air. However, you can control the food, and it can either prevent diseases or cause diseases. And through my experience, I learned how we can actually prevent most diseases by proper diet. And also, diet is usually the first line of therapy with any kind of disease, whether heart disease, diabetes, anything. So I became really passionate about nutrition and becoming a dietitian. The best part of it, I think, you feel like you're really making a difference. So you can really help patients, whether preventing diseases or treating diseases, without the complications of all the extra medication, for example. The other good thing is there's such great work-life balance with it. Most of the time you have flexibility working like part-time, full-time, per diem, so different kind of schedules. And there's so many different areas to work in, whether you're interested in becoming in a clinic, as a clinician, for example, you can work inpatient or outpatient, and you have so many different areas to focus on. Or you can work, if you like teaching, you have like the one-on-one. If you like eating disorders, or maybe you like actually working in food service, or you like working at school districts with working with kids, or if you even like sales, like working in nutraceutical companies, for example. So there's so many different areas you can work in, which I think is great. It's also an always evolving field. A lot of research comes up all the time, so you always need to be updated with information. So it always adds something nice to work in, because you're always learning something new, practicing new stuff. If you're working, for example, in a clinical setting with other professionals, you always have the opportunity to share information with the rest of the team, which I got to do a lot, rounding every day in ICU rounds. So I think that's great. What I least like about the career, luckily I never did private practice, but as everyone else said, private practice, you know, all the billing, people hate it. Like half the time they're actually just billing. And so I heard that from so many people. But the good news is a lot of dietitians choose to have their private practice, which is also great, great option. One thing I hear people complain about or criticize dietitians, or even dietitians themselves would say that, is that they feel like they're not being heard, and that, for example, physicians, they underestimate them or don't listen to them. But luckily this was not. I worked at Kaiser, for example, for 8 years. Before that, I worked at a different hospital, and I never experienced that, actually. So in fact, like the physicians always ask me to share information, or even teach the resident stuff, like all the nutrition information, or even like I had like doctors asking me to present information to the rest of the team, or I had like workshop for nurses, or even like I had the pharmacists, they asked me to review their policies when it comes to like TPN and all that stuff. So if you really prove yourself and you have the science to back you up, you have the information and the confidence, and if you're really a patient advocate, they really do listen. So that was not my experience, at least.
So thank you. Yeah, I think medicine's getting to that more holistic approach finally, right? Dr. Roberts, best and worst.
The best part would be the situations when you could actually impact a patient. And there were so much of our days that were spent in just routine dispensing of medications that we worked really hard to be able to have relationships with patients and know who they were when they were coming in, be able to greet them, ask them how they're doing, ask how the medication is going. A specific example was one particular patient who was newly diagnosed with a particular illness, came in with her medications and was quite distraught. Was not happy. I mean, it was a difficult diagnosis for her. As I brought the medications down to her, I could tell that this was difficult for her. And I had an opportunity to discuss with her that the medication didn't have to be a lifelong medication, that I really appreciate what Dr. Farahap said, because as practitioners, we can work together and being able to explain to this particular person that lifestyle changes could be made. And it just really opened her up. She was so thrilled with that information. She hadn't considered that. And she was able to actually get off the medication after a period of time because she embraced those changes. I think the part of the career that I disliked the most was seeing people who were not willing to embrace their own health care, who felt as though they just needed to take medications and take more and more medications. It was also extremely difficult for me to watch drug-seeking behavior. We had lots of that, especially in the latter years of my working in retail pharmacy. I have to say that was up there as far as one of the reasons that I decided to step away from that practice. Unfortunately, it is huge in our culture now. And it's an example of people who are not willing to choose healthiness.
Thank you. You know, that reminded me of empowering your patients, right? I remember the first time when I was very young in practice and someone came to me with back pain and I suggested they lose 30 pounds and see what it did. And they lost the 30 pounds and their back pain went away. And I've just realized the importance of having patients have a buy-in into their care. And it was empowering to me to realize that I could help others just by the power of suggestion. So Dr. Kim, best and worst.
Best thing, I think as all of the speakers have noted, when we can impact our patients' lives, that's actually kind of where we find the most fulfilling aspects. And so when there's some type of direct intervention, whether it is from just a conversation of weight loss or healthy, back care or a surgical intervention, particularly in traumatic situations where patients can come in neurologically devastated, and I perform an intervention and they recover. That's some of the most amazing things to see, the power of the intervention, but also the power of our bodies to recover. So that's really amazing about kind of being a neurosurgeon. The least part, what I like least about the career, I think many people have touched upon that, and I'll just reiterate, the administrative duties, the paperwork, the medical authorization process, all of those things make it much harder to provide care for our patients. And the burden of the EMR systems have really impacted the time that we spend, or the decreasing amount of time that we spend with our patients. And then also, as Dr. Roberts had mentioned, kind of there's a lot of disenfranchisement of our patients. They don't feel empowered, like you mentioned, to make changes to their lifestyles, and you see more and more of that, which is very unfortunate.
And just for those of you that are acronyms, the EMR is electronic medical record, which helps us physicians that have horrible handwriting, but it's very time consuming. Kelly, best and worst about being a PA.
Okay. Best is, I'm going to sound like a broken record because everybody's already said it, but it's just feeling fulfilled. Medicine is just a really rewarding career. I mentioned in the beginning, I was an engineer for 7 years before I parlayed into medicine, and I loved engineering. I think it's a noble profession, and I loved the problem solving aspect of it, but I didn't feel like I was making a difference. And so now I have the contrast of, yes, like what I'm doing is really making a difference in the lives of our patients. So that's just given me a lot of peace and fulfillment. I think in medicine, you are with a lot of like-minded individuals. So I've met a lot of amazing people that are in it for the same reason that I am. And it's an amazing environment to be in. And I love problem solving and troubleshooting and doing that for patients. So that's kind of the best for me. The worst is, I've always worked in oncology, and sometimes no matter how hard we try and no matter what we do for our patients, the outcome is not what we want it to be. So that's kind of the tough part of my job. And it's stressful. Medicine's a stressful job. You're just not sitting behind a desk with your feet up. I remember when my very first job out of PA school, I worked inpatient for a surgical team, and literally every night for 6 months, I dreamt about being in the hospital. and one night those dreams just went away, but I think it took a good 6 months. So there is a big level of stress in medicine. I don't have to tell you guys that. And then I think just kind of from a personal standpoint, you just have to know if you go into medicine that hospitals don't close after 5 or on the weekends. And people don't stop being sick after 5 o'clock. So like I told you, I've worked inpatient. I've worked for services that provide care 24 hours a day. I've worked nights. I work weekends, holidays. I obviously live in California now. My family is in Pennsylvania. That's where I grew up. So if you're working the day before Christmas and the day after Christmas, that means you're not seeing your family. You can't travel and do those things. So there are some, sacrifices you make on a personal level.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you, Kelly. I have had students that had changed careers. I had a lawyer in my class at Coastline who decided after practicing law 6 years, he wanted to be a nurse, so he came back. I had a person who ran a business, and I swear she must have millions of dollars, and she came to a community college because she could take the classes in a small group, and she went to medical school in her 40s. So it's that fulfillment, I think, that really draws us to it. Last question. What is your advice for someone looking at career options and applying for postgraduate healthcare education? So if you're in the shoes of the person that's here watching today, what would you tell them? So Dr. Patel.
Well, I think I chose this career because I like sports and I like orthopedics. So that was the main thing. And it did give me flexibility. So if you like working with shoulders, knees, low back pain, working with athletes. I actually worked with athletes for a little bit because I also have a certified strength and conditioning. So if that's your passion and you want some flexibility, I think it's a great field. People are living longer. They're definitely trying more things. So I'll give you an example. When the depression hit, we still had patients because their back and neck hurt more. And then when the economy is good, they go out and snowboard and ski and they hurt themselves. So it's still good. So I think it's a recession-proof field. I think all of medicine is. So I definitely recommend it. I wouldn't change anything. I really enjoyed what I chose. And just like everyone else, our theme at our clinic is exercise is medicine. That was my motto at the clinic. And we really took heart to that. So I would recommend it to anybody. I went to Loma Linda and I really enjoyed my time at Loma Linda. It was a great school. So.
Jamie, what advice would you give people?
Oh, so many things. It's interesting because as an educator, I get to see a lot of RN students that come in, actually all RNs that come in and go through the nurse practitioner program. And I would say one of the biggest fallacies is that nurse practitioner is a lot more flexible than the RN career, which typically is not so. I would definitely recommend speaking to nurse practitioners in the areas that you're interested in working in. And if you can, get in and do a day with them, shadow them, see what that day looks like versus just hearing from stories, from experiences. If you can get that one-on-one so you can see for yourself, that is definitely my strongest recommendation.
Thank you. I have a sister that's a physical therapist and loves it. And I have a niece that's an ICU nurse at Parkland Hospital, which is where JFK was taken. And one amazing thing about nursing, I think, is diversity of the field. So there's so much in nursing. Once you channel into something, it may limit what you choose, but it's amazing. So Dr. Farrahat, advice.
Okay, so just like Jamie said too, I would recommend that if someone's interested in becoming a dietitian, to just shadow different people. And as I said, like nutrition has a lot of different areas to work in. And honestly, when I went to school, I didn't know what I was interested in. I knew I liked nutrition. I was very passionate about it. And it's okay. You don't need to know like exactly which area you like. And that's why there are internships and field experience where you can get exposed to all these different areas. And once you get bored of one area, through your career, you can shift to something else. So just keep an open mind of all the different opportunities there are there. Actually, this month is also dietitian month. So happy registered dietitian month for for me.
Well, I need to, maybe that's why Dr. Adrian used to have donuts in the back of hers, right? For her back screen. Dr. Adrian's our president. Dr. Roberts.
I have a couple of things to share. The first would be that speaking directly to all of the students, you're faced with so many challenges. You have obstacles in your path right now. Some of you are living in your car. Some of you have family members who are not embracing what you're actually trying to go for. And then there's financial challenges. There's a lot of challenges. So really, I would say embrace those challenges. Don't shy away from them. Take them head on. Take a look at what these challenges are, and seek help. Seek people who can walk with you on the journey. And the reason that I say this is because we need absolutely every single one of you. Every one of you is extremely important, and we need you. You are going to be wonderful, and we need you in the field. The second thing that I would say is stay curious. Be as curious as you can possibly be at this very moment in time, and stay that way. Continue asking questions. Continue, if something sparks your interest, go look it up. Go find some more information about it, and continue that throughout all of your years of working. You never know what's going to hit you in the face someday that's going to help somebody else. It's going to help you. So just stay curious.
I love that advice. And, I went for 26 years as a practicing physician to now, I don't know where I'm at, 15 years of teaching. And I've been blessed with 2 great careers that give you wonderful fulfillment. But if you ask me why my purpose of teaching, it's to create lifelong learners. Because you have that curiosity and that love of learning, you'll love your field forever, because it just continuously amazes you. It's just giving me goosebumps thinking about it. All right, Dr. Kim.
Advice. I think one of the most important aspects about healthcare is that there's so many different types of things to do in healthcare, right? And I think this panel is just a small, even little snippet. But to get a sense of which way that you would kind of go, I think it's really important to know yourself. Know yourself, your interests, because that will drive essentially what type of career that you'll go towards. And so, whenever I speak with medical students or residents, that's always one of the things. I think introspection is really important. And then being open to opportunities, to different experiences, and just continually seeking out those things, I think is what will drive kind of your sense of fulfillment in life as well.
Thank you. And Kelly.
So I would just say, for anyone who is in a non-medical career that's contemplating the change, that don't be afraid of it. And it's never too late to make a change. When I kind of made my transition into medicine, I thought, number one, I'd be the oldest one in my class, and I would be the oddball. And I wasn't by any means. I would say half of my PA class were non-traditional folks like me, and for a myriad of different careers. And everybody has so much to bring to the table. And I think life experience really counts a lot if you become a healthcare provider. Even more than the book smarts, just the experiences you've had in your life. So everybody can bring a lot. So I would tell you that. The other thing that's very specific to the physician assistant profession is when we get certified, we're not specialized per se. We can get just pass our boards in a general medicine sense. And so in theory, we are supposed to be able to be able to work in a variety of specialties. If I work in oncology now, in theory, could I get a job in emergency medicine? Yes, or I could move to pediatrics or surgery or whatnot. I chose to specialize kind of right off the bat in oncology. I knew that that's where my heart was. And so that's all I've ever done. I think it would be, if right now I decided I wanted to do another discipline, I think it would be really difficult for me, just because of now the specialized background I have. In retrospect, although you can't, hindsight's 2020, I do wonder if it would have benefited me to go into primary care or internal medicine first, just to have a broad basis, just to carry all those things along with me into whatever specialty I chose. So that would be just one thing that I would say if you're, contemplating becoming a PA and you're not exactly sure what specialty you wanted to do, maybe go broad first before making any decisions, because I think it will just open more doors for you.
All right. Dr. Patel, can you see it in the chat? Having been a clinic owner, what would you say you looked for when hiring a new PT?
Yeah, I think for anybody, what we look for is experience, but then the main thing is, how do I get experience without anybody hiring you, right? So it's what we've actually hired is actually the students that have done their internships at our clinic. So I already know them. I've already trained them. They're familiar with the patients. They're familiar with the EMR. So really, the ones that have been the best applicants or the best employees are the ones that have done an internship at our clinic already. So maybe doing your last rotation or last clinical at a place that you like, your chances of being hired there might greatly improve. And I don't know, maybe someone else can kind of volunteer on the panel and say the same thing. As far as the CSCS, I think it does help. As a certified strength and conditioning specialist, I was able to help people with sports-related injuries. I don't think that if I saw 2 applicants that had just a PT degree and certified strength, I might go with them. It depends on your field. Like I did mostly orthopedics, but if you're going into pediatrics, if you're going into neurology, that might be something different. There are different certifications that you can get. CSCS is more for orthopedics, but you can get a pediatric certification, you can get a neurology certification, and that does help your applicant. So I would look for that specialty as well. Kind of like what Kelly was saying, go broad and then pick a field that you want to go in and then specialize in that, and that will help.
Yeah, I mean, I've only hired people when I was in private practice to run in the practice, right? And it's those soft skills that you look for a lot of times too. It's the ones where you want a people person. You want a person that likes being with people. And believe me, there are some people in medicine that don't like being with people. Usually they end up in the laboratory or radiology, right? So they don't have to talk to people, but or pathology. But do you want people person? So I see Professor Runk is here. Do you want to make a comment, Dr. Runk?
Well, as my kids have been running through the background, so I apologize. The video's been off intermittently. There were 2 things in response to the CSCS. So I have mine as well, and they are actually in the process of moving that so that you have to come from a certified undergraduate program to sit for the exam. That is not the case currently. So if you don't have it, it is in the next 3 to 5 years, that is going to be a requirement, yet all that have the certification ahead of time will get grandfathered in, and you will be able to maintain that. So it's something to consider, that once you have your bachelor's at this point, if you pass the exam and have a couple prerequisites, the program itself that you come from does not have to have that association. So it just a timing thing. There was a question in the chat. CSCS is Certified Strength and Conditioning Specialist. And the one area that we haven't maybe touched on that's similar is athletic training. And I sat in on graduate interviews for people applying to athletic training school. And I will say that the people skills was something that a lot of times you don't think of, but being able to clearly articulate responses to things and your passion for the field was really helpful. And these additional certifications just show that you're passionate. Kind of like the earlier interview of what makes my application look good. These certifications show that you are pursuing it actively, even for things that you don't have to get. So it's just something to keep in mind as an additional feature. So.
Yeah, I like that. I like that, Dr. Rank. I mean, I think when people think about applying, what are they looking for? They're looking for the same thing you're looking for. When you go to a doctor or a physical therapist or a nurse, who do you want to go to, right? That's who you want to be. You want to be that person you want to go to. That's why I love teaching, because I want to go to you guys sometime, right? Because I'm going to fall apart in a few years, and I need some of you to take care of me. All right, Jim, you have a question?
Yes, it's just more of a general question of, it was mentioned before, but what are some of the top qualities you look for a clinician? You mentioned soft skills. Can you name some examples of some soft skills that you look for in a applicant or a clinician?
I think Dr. Runk hit on some of it, was being articulate. You want a person. You want a person who loves being at work and work. You want the colleague that you want to work with. All right. So if the person who's responsive, who takes care of people, who has that passion, who spends the extra time listening to the patient with their problem, I mean, it is. You want to be that person you want to go to, right? At that, I want to go to that physical therapist because they treat me well, right? They're good at their job, but they also treat me well. And that's the people skills you're looking for, I think. Does anybody else want to make a comment?
I think patients want to be heard. So being a good listener is a really important soft skill.
Yeah,
well, it's more than just being a good listener. It's you have to be able to listen, but also actively listen, I think is the biggest part, where you're actively listening to that person and engaging, right? And it's not just being a wall and listening to them. I think there's a difference.
Yeah, and I just want to add really quickly to the skills that Jim asked. I think that's a very good question, and the panelists did, there's like 21st century skills that are pretty related to what everyone was talking about. So yeah, so the hard skills are important, but the soft skills that Dr. Henry and everyone else mentioning is also incredibly important. These are some of the top skills, for example. So there's adaptability, analysis, mindset, collaboration, communication, digital fluency is really important. Entrepreneurship mindset, empathy, resilience, self-awareness, and social diversity awareness. So when you're taking courses, for example, or anything that you're doing where you're gaining experience, you want to make sure that you are actually improving in some of these skills, because later down the line, in addition to your hard skills, this is going to play a role, whether you're applying for a grad school, doing an interview, whether you're applying for the actual job in the future. So you want to make sure that you also build this as well. Okay, well, thank you again for all the panelists for sharing your wonderful experience. We really appreciate your time. I think, taking the time out of your day. I know Kelly is, is in her office right now. So I think that's, it really shows dedication to the new generation who's going to be, the new generation of the healthcare professionals, because it's a really important field. I just want to thank again the panels that we had today. Thank you all the expert practitioners, and also the faculty. Thank you everyone up here. Thank you again. This event wouldn't have been as successful if this wasn't for you. To the event organizers, is there anything you want to say? Any last things you want to mention?
This is Dr. Henry. I'd only say is, if you don't get in the first time, try again. All right. You may be, if it's what you want to do and you have a passion for it and you have the skill set for it, you do need a certain GPA, but you can do it. You can do it. It took me twice to get into neurosurgery. Medical school wasn't hard, but neurosurgery it took me a second time. And I actually ended up better off because I ended up doing one less year because they gave me a year off for my internship. So it didn't cost me any more time, and I got great training where I went. So don't give up. Don't give up. It'll happen.
Well, I was just going to say also, we are here to help you guys. So, if you have any questions, Dr. Paolo Vargas' office is very beneficial. His office offers a lot of ways to kind of help you, like interviewing skills, your applications. So take advantage of the services that Coastline offers. Don't let this journey be a lonely one. We're here to help, right? Ask us for help, ask his office for help. So, we all want you guys to succeed and be the best candidates out there. So don't be shy.
You want to talk about the pre-med club?
Yeah, I put up the webpage earlier on today, the pre-med club. We do offer a lot of, we have meetings. We coordinate with students for volunteer opportunities. We're looking for leaders to get your leadership skills in. So, please sign up at our webpage somewhere. Oh, thank you. Yeah. And get on our mailing list, come to our meetings. We also have professionals coming into our meetings talking about their professions. So yeah, I encourage you guys to come. It's free. Any student who comes is a member of the club. And yeah, we're looking forward to having you guys there. And it's for all healthcare professions, not just medicine. Most of our members are all nursing, mostly nursing.
Just have another comment is that we are starting some lab skill courses. So when we're able to meet in person again and do face-to-face labs, and you've missed your lab skills, they'll take a week to do a whole semester of anatomy, a week to do a semester of physiology, a week to do your cell molecular biology, a week to do your micro. So look for those if you need lab skills before entering into your graduate education. We'll have those available. We're allowed to do it.
And over at the Career Center, I have helped students with their personal statements in PA, PT, med school, nursing, all that. So definitely take advantage of that, the personal statements. If you need extra eyes, or also mock interviews. I've helped many students in the healthcare field prepare for that. So definitely this is free resources and services for you as a student. So you're paying for this, so definitely take advantage. And also to your faculty as well. I mean, they have a lot of knowledge, and I'm sure students reach out to them all the time. So don't be shy to reach out, because again, you could have an amazing GPA, but if you don't have the soft skills, like it's going to be very difficult for you to kind of go through the interview process and getting through, grad school, like all that process. So you want to make sure you build those skills now. So by the time you get, to those interviews, you're more likely to get that position because you have both the hard and the soft skills at the same time.
Can I say something about students preparing to ask for letters of recommendation? It would be, what's very helpful, most of the ones that I write are for physical therapy school, OT, PA, those, but I go to the same link every time, and I fill out, how well I know someone, and they ask many questions about that student that I'm writing the letter for. And what's helpful on the student side of it is go through those, use that as a rubric for how well your instructor, whoever's going to write the letter of recommendation for you, go through that and share that information. Know about those questions before the class if you're asking someone you're taking a class with, because there are lots of opportunities for us to learn about you and how to answer those questions. But there are some times that I get asked, and I know how a student is academically. I know they turn their work in on time, they're an A student, but we really do want to know about you if we're going to write this. And so having an organized either resume or a list of activities and volunteer things that you've done, we really truly want to help paint that picture that the admissions was talking about for you. But the more you give us in an organized fashion and the more time you give us to write them, the better, because it allows us to really sincerely put in the time to make something that stands out when you're doing your application. So just keep that in the back of your mind, as you're taking the classes, to do that.
I wanted to address the question in chat about how do I narrow down all these applications to all these places, right? And when you do it for college, it's the same thing, right? Because you can apply to a zillion things. So if you have the chance to visit the schools, I would visit them, because you will get a feeling of belongingness at certain places and not at others. It's really amazing to me how that happens. So you can feel the culture and the vibe of the place, and you say, oh, I want to be here, or no, I don't like this place, right? And geographically, if you want to live there, and then I think I'd look at cost too. The nursing programs that vary hugely with the amount of cost for them. So if cost is important, look at that, look at geography. Do you want to be far away from your family, close by? And then if you have a chance to visit. The other question is, when looking back, is there anything you would have done differently or mistakes you've made when starting out? I think for me as a physician, the only thing I might have done differently was consider another career. I mean, neurosurgery, and Dr. Kim can attest to that, is a very male-dominated field. And it's interesting, but I might have looked at another male-dominated field, which was urology, which never even crossed my mind. But I think the kidney is the second smartest organ in the body, and the reason for that is being a female in medicine, though it's changing. In urology, half the population will want to come to you, and since it's such a male-dominated field, you would never have problem having patients. It's being a female neurosurgery, there were some people that didn't want to come to me because I was female, but then there was an equal amount that did want to come to me because I was female. So it's interesting how gender plays a part in medicine. And we're seeing that now in OB-GYN, right? As OB-GYN is becoming now amazingly female because women would, not all, but a lot of women would prefer to go to a female doctor. And so looking at gender in the career has actually been an interesting thing that I think I might have considered more initially. I don't know, Dr. Kim, maybe you want to say something.
I think exposure is really important. Like I think Dr. Henry, you mentioned, urology. As a neurosurgeon, we also work with ENT physicians. And as a medical student, I knew nothing about ENT surgeons. I knew nothing about that particular specialty. So being really open and open meaning actively engaged. You actually have to do the work of looking into different careers, because otherwise you're just going to choose what's right in front of you or what you've been exposed to in your training. And so, asking lots of questions of all the different people that you encounter, I think is really important. And so that's kind of is what I would say, is just having that curiosity. And then you'll start to know what your interests are. You'll be like, oh no, I'm not interested in urology or ENT or, all of that. So I just encourage, a lot of curiosity in the beginning.
Debbie, I grew up with a very interesting perspective because my dad sells medical malpractice insurance. So that is also, I started out pre-med. Then I was pursuing anesthesiology, actually, when I started out. And then my dad opened his mouth and I chose a different occupation. He encouraged everything that I did, but it took a different route for me. I started out pre-med wanting to help people and found cardiac rehab and exercise physiology was another way to help people. It just didn't have to be medicine, but I think that that's also something we talk about, insurance and billing and all the things, and charting and all the things that you don't think of. I think understanding the less pretty side of it is also just as important as understanding that. So those are also really good resources, because he's, especially COVID related and different things, he sat in on so many different legal suits, and getting to see that is really really insightful.
And I think that's where the people skills comes into play too, right? Because bad things happen all the time. You cannot avoid bad things happening. They will happen. And the way you deal with it, and the way you deal with it, the family, right? Suits don't happen because something bad happened, because patients are aware of that. You explain it to them beforehand. They happen because you didn't care for the patient after they happened. And so those people skills become so important.
Awesome. And now I want to hear from the students. I'm wondering, for this event, I'm wondering what was like the main takeaway for you for this event?
So my main takeaway from all of this is to not compare your chapter 1 with someone else's chapter 10. So you are all on your own personal journey in your own career paths. So the moment that we enter in this comparison of this other person's in this career or that career or further ahead, the more you put self-doubt in yourself, and you're basically self-hindering yourself in this journey. So the best advice from hearing from all the experts and the facilitators is just to take pride in where you are. You're here because you're making an effort to better purpose for your future paths. And so just to encourage everyone is just to press on.
Awesome. Thanks for that insight. I think that's really important, because I feel like, when you're younger, especially in med school or pursuing this pathway, sometimes it's influence from our parents too, right? They just want to push you, and our and friends, right? When you see them succeed, you want to catch up, right? They're like, oh, they're taking 12, 15, 19 units. They're going to UCLA, USC. And I feel like I'm here and I got to compete and I got to get there. And they're buying their Tesla, they're buying their houses. I got to be there, right? So definitely that's a really good takeaway. Like we're all in different paths. Like all our chapter ones are different. I think that's really great insight. And Julian?
Well, I really like that point Jim made. I feel like hearing that, we think like we have to get something done by like this time, but then hearing from the experts that, maybe they took some time off and to really figure themselves out. That was great. So I love that point. I think one thing that I really definitely took away was how to also stand out. Like the question I asked, let's say for Dr. Patel, right? Like with being a clinic owner, what were you looking at for hiring PTs? I feel like a big problem is that students, they graduate, they get their degrees, and then they find it hard to get work because, healthcare professions are just like, a lot of people want to go into that. So I think hearing from the experts on how we can basically get jobs after graduating, that was really insightful, and definitely appreciate that.
Like Lewis has a question.
Oh, not a question, but I just wanted to echo what Jim and Julian said. I thought this panel was really, really insightful. I'm going to be honest, I came because I'm one of Professor Brunk's students, and I thought it'd be interesting, but I actually learned a lot from the panel. And I think some of my key takeaways are that the community college level of like hardness of the classes is very comparable to UC's and Cal State's. And as someone who's transferring in the fall to CSULB, I find that really reassuring, because time and time again, I hear like CCs are somehow inferior, and I think that's very classist. Yeah, exactly. But also I learned how to make yourself stand out, just like what Julian said, and how being personable is a very, very important attribute in like the medical field. And so I'm taking those, like every lesson I learned today, kind of applying it to my future in education, eventually into PT practice. But I also liked how Dr. Patel mentioned how he was a professor and a physical therapist, because that's something I want to do. So I'm kind of inspired now to keep going with that. But thank you, everybody.
Thank you. And I just wanted to make a comment on what Jim said about self-doubt, and reasonable self-doubt, I think is very healthy. In fact, the scariest thing to me is a surgeon without any self-doubt. All right. That's a scary person, and I don't want them operating on me. And and I wanted to say, Lewis, one of my first students, when I was teaching anatomy, I was handing out an exam, and she goes, "This is like a college exam." I just almost started laughing. But yeah, so I think we're comparable. You learn a lot at where you are here.
Yeah, that's definitely one misconception. People think that community college classes are like inferior, but it really is not. And in fact, it's a great place to start, because if you think about it, it's really how you end, right? It doesn't really make sense to go in debt when you're going to go to grad school anyways or med school. So it's really about how you end. And I feel like when you start at community college, you could easily, you start comparing yourself to like your friends who are like, oh, they're like a UC or a Cal State. And I was one of them who started at a UC. And then, when everyone already finished their schooling, I came out with this huge debt, and they came out debt free. And I'm still paying off the loans that I got to pay for undergrad. So I just feel like community college is like a stigma, in the high school level that we need to work on. So it's not as seen as like an inferior education, because if you compare, the amount of learning that you gain from community colleges, it's the same education, you're just paying more money for the name of the brand, basically, right? Awesome. Cool. So thank you again, everyone, for attending this event. I think, it sounds like students really got a lot from this, but Luis mentioned, Dr. Patel, you're kind of shadowing him. Like you kind of want to be that person where you do PT and also teach at the same time. Networking. You want to make sure you build that pathway now. You build a relationship with Dr. Patel now, because if you've known him for like 5-6 years, that's something you can put down on, as a reference, for example, because it's so common for students to come to a career center. They say, I don't know who do I ask for a reference. And they'll write their most recent professor and they'll put them down for like 2 months, right? So make sure you start thinking about like, who's the best person that I could start building a relationship with. So that way, later down the line, that's your mentor right there. That's letters of recommendation, that's references. It's just a win-win overall. And knowing Dr. Patel, he probably knows connections in the field as well. So if you need an internships or job shadowing, that's your go-to person. So definitely take advantage of that as well. Okay, so thank you again, everyone, for attending this event. Dr. Henry, did you want to say something?
I just wanted to say when we're back to quote normal and on-site, right? We have work-study programs that match people with PT aides and research programs too, and that's run by Dr. Hoare, who wasn't with us today. But she has a lot of places where if you need extra research or you do need to shadow people, when we're back fully on-site, we'll be able to offer that again.
Awesome. Well, thank you again, everyone, for coming to this event, and hopefully you all reach out to our wonderful event organizers here, and also our practitioner and myself. So thank you again for joining this event.